First is this Lunatone card, which is just crazy. This is one of the best abilities I've ever seen on a basic Pokemon. The ability is, one of the best I've ever seen. Once per turn, if you have any Soul Rock in play, you can discard a fighting energy from your hand and draw 3 cards. You can only use one of this ability per turn, but that's honestly all you need. Think about Radiant Greninja, arguably the best Pokemon period in the history of the game, largely because of its ability to discard energy and draw cards that couldn't be matched by anything else. Until now, Lunatone and Solrock will be an auto-include in every fighting deck for years to come, and will absolutely be winning tournaments in the future with this broken ability. Just considering how good Radiant Greninja was and how many decks it could be fit into, any deck that plays any fighting energy would love to have this card. I'm thinking about decks like Raging Bolt, who play fighting energy and need to get them in the discard pile to use Professor Sada, and also have the bench space with Area Zero Underdepths in order to fit a Lunatone and Solrock on the bench. I'm also thinking about decks like Mega Lucario. Even Goldengo could, in theory, play this card as extra draw power, although I'm not sure how much Goldengo would need it. Anyways, this is just a great card, and like I said, it will be winning tournaments in the future because it's just incredible. Now, the next card we'll get to in a minute has another broken card draw ability, but before that, I want to ask you to subscribe. It's free, helps me out a lot, and it also keeps you up to date on cool Pokemon story content, informative breakdowns, and card reveals like this. Anyways, now it's time for Mega Kangaskhan EX. Oh my god, is this card broken. First off, its ability. Once per turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may draw 2 cards. Keep in mind, this is a basic Pokemon with 300 HP. And yeah, just because it's worth 3 prize cards doesn't mean it's a liability because the HP is so high. Also, it's weak to fighting, and fighting kind of sucks right now. Although it'll probably be a lot better with the new set coming out and the Premium Power Pro item and Mega Lucario. Any deck that plays Latias EX will 100% play this card no matter what, I'm confident. Now, you can thankfully only activate this ability once per turn, but again, that is enough. Drawing 2 cards every turn, just for sending a Pokemon to the active spot and then retreating it, is insane. And while this card having a 3 retreat cost makes it so Air Balloon would not work with it to give it a free retreat cost, that's a good thing. I'm happy this doesn't work with Air Balloon, or else it would likely be in every deck, because you can just draw 2 cards whenever the heck you need to. As proof, think about Pheasantipity EX. This card is at least a top 2 Pokemon in Standard, maybe top 1. Its main draw is its Flip the Script ability, which once per turn, if any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn, you can draw 3 cards. And just like Mega Kangaskhan, you can only use one of this ability each turn. Now, this Pokemon can be used on the bench and not just in the active, unlike Kangaskhan, but the fact that it's so situational means it doesn't have value until your opponent takes a KO. Now, decks with Latias like Raging Bolt, Ho-Oh Armarouge, Miraidon, Joltik, Flareon, any deck that plays Latias can easily take advantage of this. Not only will decks with Latias have a great free retreat pivot, but also a great Prime Catcher target. You pass. Turn 2, your opponent puts a 2-prizer in play as Raging Bolt, and you can easily go Prime Catcher plus Nest Ball plus Crispin or something like that, and get your combo off where you go get Latias, get Kangaskhan, Prime into Kangaskhan, draw 2, retreat with Latias into Raging Bolt, and take a 1-hit KO. I can already picture Raging Bolt using Prime Catcher turn 2 very easily, but it works even better in Raging Bolt than any other deck. Not only is this a great mid and late game pivot when a Pokemon gets knocked out, but it's also specifically great in Noctowl decks. This is because of the Fan Rotom package that keeps the deck functioning. Fan Rotom searches the deck for 3 colorless Pokemon under 100 HP on your first turn. You almost always grab a Hoot Hoot or 2 and maybe a Noctowl for the next turn, but these decks almost always play Ditto. Ditto from 151's ability, Transformative Start, only works on your first turn, but if it's in the active spot during your first turn, you can search your deck for any basic Pokemon and replace it with Ditto by discarding Ditto and putting the new Pokemon in its place. I'm sure you already see the combo, but in case you don't, turn 1 Fan Call for 2 Hoot Hoot and a Ditto. Retreat into Ditto for 1 energy from either a Hoot Hoot or a Rotom or whatever. Grab Kangaskhan, draw 2, pass, next turn, draw 2, and draw 1 for turn. Yeah, I mean, it writes itself. This is incredible. This is one of the best abilities I've ever seen on a basic Pokemon, in my opinion. And since it gives the players so many more options on their turn than otherwise would be possible, the only cost being a 300 HP 3-prizer in play, and promoting it only to retreat for free into Latias after. I mean, this is incredible. I could even see this being played in Dragapult EX decks, since not only is the extra card draw very nice, but after you start Phantom Diving, the deck really lacks a high value pivot in order to promote after Dragapult gets knocked out. Most Pult lists already play Latias EX, especially straight Dragapult decks, which don't need Dusknoir. So in my opinion, it's a great fit. And if you for some reason don't want to use Budu going second on your first turn, no problem. Just draw 2 instead and have a high chance to draw 2 next turn for free as well. This card also has great synergy with the supporter card Brock Scouting that is in Dragapult decks, since Brock Scouting can search for 2 basic Pokemon, which can find you Latias EX and Mega Kangaskhan. You can bench both, retreat, and get the draw 2 right away. This card is so broken, and I haven't even mentioned its attack yet. However, that's for good reason. Largely, it kinda sucks. For 3 colorless energy, you do 200 damage and then flip a coin until you get tails, doing 50 more damage for each heads. So, 50% of the time, this attack only does 200 damage for 3 energy. However, I still think this attack is very valuable, especially in certain metagames, and I say that also because of Pheasantipity EX. You see, before the rotation of the F block in early 2025, Snorlax stall and control decks like Pidgeot in general were extremely popular, successful, and strong before the rotation. These decks usually try to trap useless Pokemon in the active spot for the whole game with Pokemon like Mawile, Wellspring Mask Ogerpon EX, and Snorlax. And with cards like Accompanying Flute, Erica's Invitation, Echoing Horn, and Mantine, it was very easy and good at trapping your Pokemon. However, one support Pokemon stood out as not being as big of a liability as all the rest. Pheasantipity EX. Why? Its only attack, Cruel Arrow, only costs 3 colorless energy. It's not the actual cost of energy that's important, it's the colorless energy requirement. This matters because with Fez being in almost every deck, it could easily be targeted and trapped if its attack required, let's say, a Dark and 2 colorless, since not every deck played Dark energy. However, because it could attack for 3 of any energy, it often wasn't game over if it got trapped, since you could just use Cruel Arrow by attaching 3 times and snipe 100 to the active or other vulnerable bench sitters like Rotom V. This made it so instead of Pheasantipity being a great target to trap for the entire game, it actually became quite threatening if you left it in the active spot for too long. This one attack made an already great card even greater in a metagame with Stall, since other supports like Lumineon V, Rotom V, and Squawkabilly EX were all huge liabilities to have in your deck due to Stall's prevalence, despite their incredible support. But with Pheasantipity EX and now Mega Kangaskhan, you can not only get immense value out of it game to game, but it also can't be safely trapped like other bench sitters like Latias EX, Squawkabilly EX, or Noctowl, since its attack is versatile and strong enough to do enough damage to these stall attackers. So although it obviously won't be the Oko machine sweeping through your opponent's deck, Mega Kangaskhan can do enough damage when it is called upon to make itself a threat to a control deck if tried to be stalled. However, with any good card, there are trade-offs and drawbacks. First of all, the 3 retreat cost makes it very unsplashable unless you're playing Latias EX already, because it helps your deck, like in decks like Raging Bull or Flareon for example. Second, Team Rocket's Watchtower might pick up in play with this card releasing, especially since it turns off colorless Pokemon abilities. This card is already very good at slowing down Noctowl engine decks with Fan Rotom, Noctowl, and Squawkabilly. I can only see Team Rocket's Watchtower being an even more popular tech option in decks that can afford a tech stadium like Dragapult or Goldengo. Just from the reveals of Lunatone and Mega Kangaskhan, I have a bad feeling about where this metagame is going to go. In general, more turbo draw power options being available leads to shorter and more volatile games, where one player having a better turn 1 than the opponent often dictates who will win. Now, obviously, skill is more important than luck in the Pokemon TCG in general, but with more turbo cards, luck can easily outweigh skill with snowball turns and constant pressure. I fear that with more broken card draw being produced, the meta will be entirely centralized around fast wins and turbo gameplay with little counterplay. I actually have some proof of this type of metagame with the Ultra Prism through Rebel Clash format. In this meta, the undisputed kings were ADP Zacian, Pikarom, and Fire Toolbox decks often built around Reshiram and Charizard GX. These decks all have one thing in common. high HP basic Pokemon with super powered attacks, and turbo support Pokemon and trainers that promoted a hyper aggressive style of play. Pikarom had Dedenne GX, Electromagnetic Sonar, Electro Power, Thunder Mountain, Speed Energy, and Tapu Koko Prism Star, all as turbo energy acceleration or draw support cards that sped up the game. My point is that with more and more turbo draw cards being printed, especially if we get reprints of cards like Trekking Shoes or Acro Bike, it's only a matter of time before we revert to the Tag Team GX era. And with these Megas being worth 3 prize cards, all I can hope is that we don't return to one of the worst eras in Pokemon TCG history.